I would say I'm Janice. I work at the Kingston University alumni team, but I'm now going to hand over to Hilda Mulrooney to introduce herself and some of the panelists. I know one of our panelists is in the process of trying to get into Teams, so hopefully we'll be able to make that happen. But over to Hilda in the first instance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Janice, and it's great to be here and to be at this event, which I've been really excited about for some time. So my name is Hilda Mulrooney. I'm a nutritionist and dietitian. At the moment, I'm Associate Professor in Nutrition at Kingston University, and I'm also the course leader for the Nutrition, Exercise and Health degree. And today just feels like a complete pleasure because it feels like a total reunion because both Amina and Janice are previous graduates of our nutrition degree. And we haven't seen each other in a while. In fairness, there was a pandemic in between times, but Genesis was just reminding me he graduated in 2012 and Amina in 2016. So it's just brilliant that you're here today. Our third panelist is Craig Sams, who's trying to join us at the moment. So some of you might have heard Craig speak last year. He gave an event for the nutrition students, which was really, really informative. But I'm just going to hand over to each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly for a moment. And I'll just ask Amina first, if you don't mind just saying a couple of words about you and what you're doing. That would be great.
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Hilda, and the Kingston alumni team for this invite. It's great to be here. So just like Hilda said, I graduated in 2016 from the nutrition course. And since then, I've done a number of different things. So I started working, I'd always been interested in public health, and that's what I knew I wanted to get into after I graduated. So I started off working as a health and wellbeing advisor and delivering the diabetes prevention program in Northwest London. And then I moved into delivering diabetes management for children who are, for adults who have already developed diabetes to keep it under control. And I did a bit of training as well in terms of delivering that program. And then around the pandemic time, I moved into another role. So I started working as a nutritionist for a company called Busybodies, who provide child weight management programs in Hertfordshire. And 3 years on, I'm still there, but now I manage the child weight management program and services in Brent. So we provide an intervention for children between the age of 5 and 16 who are above the healthy weight percentile, and we really give them and their families the information on what they can do to improve their health, with a lot of behaviour change elements in there as well. So that's where I currently am.
That's fantastic, Amina. It's lovely to hear all you've been up to since you left Kingston. And Janice, over to you. What have you been up to? Tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to the alumni team for having me. It's such a pleasure. I was just saying before we come on, really, I would have enjoyed if this was actually live and in person, as it would be great to be back on campus again. And of course, thank you, Hilda. It's really lovely to see you as well. In terms of what have I been up to, God, 2012. It's been a very, very, very long time. I was quite fortunate. As soon as I graduated, I managed to land myself a role working as chief nutritionist for a pharmacy called John Bell and Croydon, which is pharmacy to the Royal Household. I thought I knew everything when I graduated. Nah, I learned very quickly. I was just starting my career and I was really much at the bottom. But I did that for a few years, and then I ended up working for a company called Everyone Health. I started off as a nutritionist and quickly worked my way up the ranks to community engagement manager. Apparently I'm good with people, so they put me in the community, which was great. I then ended up service managing a few public health contracts within the London area, Enfield and Bromley and the like, from looking after physical activity for the frail to your basic weight management, very similar to Amina. And I've also along the line been working privately. I'll go by the name Nutri Guy, because the nutrition guy. in case anybody wondered, was the Nutri for. I'm in good company, so you guys will get it. But people usually go, the Nutri Guy. What does that mean? So yeah, the Nutri Guy. And yeah, started off with the usual one-to-one consultations and like. But at the moment, I'm currently specializing in corporate wellness and workplace well-being. I figured we all spend so much time at work, so that's a sure good way to try and help influence people's health. And also, you know, employers have got money to spend, so I'll happily take the money and help people along the line as well. And yeah, at the moment, my particular focus is mental health within the workplace, especially after the pandemic and the like, and also having experienced, you know, the other end, the not so positive side of mental health, etc. I'm very passionate and advocate for trying to encourage people to, you know, understand and share tools in relation to how we can all improve our mental health. We all look after our bodies, right, in terms of, you know, physical health, but mental health tends to be neglected, and so I'm really passionate about that. And hopefully I can share one or two things with you guys today, but that's pretty much me. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. And you two are the embodiment of the fact that nutrition can take you down multiple different career routes, you know, and it's so lovely to hear that. And also the link between mental and physical health is so strong that it's, you know, the fact that your career has led you in that direction, Genesis, I think is lovely as well. Craig, I don't think is here at the moment, so we'll maybe carry on, and if he can join us, that would be amazing. But just so that we get started, I'm just going to throw a question out there, and maybe you could take it in turns and sharing your thoughts with us. So, I mean, nutrition is almost never out of the press one way or another, and we're all, I suppose, pretty conscious that as a nation we could be doing a lot better in terms of our eating behaviours. But I'm just thinking about, you know, what do you think has changed in terms of eating habits in the last decades? You know, how do you think change in nutrition and what people are eating has been driven? What are the key things that cause us to eat the way we do? I don't know if anybody wants to go first, or shall I just pick one of you?
Ladies first.
Okay, thanks, Genesis. Amina, over to you.
Thank you for choosing me, Genesis, to start. So yeah, I think over the past 20 years, we've seen, or even generally, we've seen how our lifestyles have changed. And I think that has been the main driving factor in how we live our life and the choices that we make. So we know that we're generally much less active than before. Most of us have 9-to-5 office jobs, so we're sitting down. We tend to do less physical work as well, so the types of jobs that we're doing don't take as much effort as before. There's food around us all the time, readily available in the, you know, you can just get a thought of, oh, I want this, and you can have it with you in what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you don't even need to move. So we know that we're snacking a lot more often as well. The types of food that we're eating is much higher in calories, much higher in sugar, salt, and it's mostly more processed foods as well, things that are cheap, quick, and fast. So those are the main, I guess, the main changes over the past 20 years. But looking at it more specifically as well, especially after the pandemic, we know that recently things like food insecurity is much more of a problem in the past, let's say, 2 years than it was, let's say, 20 years ago. And people are mostly changing their eating habits now due to financial reasons, which may have not necessarily been the case before. So we know that people, for example, are trying to reduce their food costs, they're shopping in different places. And even, you know, I think I was seeing some stats from the FSA saying that people are actually ordering less takeouts than before because of this financial difficulties that a lot of people are going through. So generally there have been, you know, a lot of changes and trends over the past 20 years. But I think, yeah, the main ones are due to our lifestyle changes and more recently due to financial.
Yeah, and I suppose when we think about that, we know that low income tends to be a driver of poor diets, not good diets. So that's a bit of a worrying trend. Thank you for that. And Genesis, what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, Amina pretty much hit it on the nail, as it were, with most of what she said. But just to kind of elaborate on what she touched on in terms of eating habits, definitely have changed one way or another. I think you touched on the big one there, I mean, in relation to convenience foods, which is probably linked to the rise in technology over the last 20 years. Fast food, these apps, like you said, you can get what you want. You don't even need to leave the comfort of your own home, which extends beyond food now as well, be it entertainment, alcohol, and you don't actually have to leave your house like at all, and you can pretty much get everything, which of course inadvertently means we're not moving around as much. So not only are we eating bad, we're not moving around as much either, which doesn't particularly help.
Okay.
And I think as well as that, I would say, like you said, prepackaged food, fast food options.
I'm on the
If anybody is
screen.
able to mute Craig.
Sorry, Genesis.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't need to be on that.
can
Do
you
I?
guys mute Craig at the moment?
Okay, hang on, I just shut it.
Sorry, there's clearly IT issues going on here.
Wait a minute, this is working. Why don't we just do that?
Genesis, do you want to carry on? And
Yeah, sure, no problem. Provided there's
sorry
no
about that.
Okay.
That's absolutely fine. So as I was saying, number one, I think convenience foods, rising technologies led to higher demand for convenience foods. Therefore, prepackaged, ready to eat fast food options very much prevalent. And that's linked obviously to the digital side of things as well. I think, as I said, the technology side of things. I think for me personally, the main one would be dietary awareness. Naturally, there's a growing awareness in terms of the importance of balanced diet and the importance of being healthy, whether it's driven by illnesses, disease, or just vanity, to be honest with you. Everybody wants to look good nowadays. So one way or another, whether it's, what's the latest supplement, the latest skin product, the latest protein shake or whatever, dietary awareness is definitely at the top of everybody's list, I would say. And also, I would say cultural diversity, actually, like London, UK, it's one of the most multiculturally diverse places in the world. Like, in fact, I was talking to a friend yesterday about this, about how actually what real traditional English food actually exists that hasn't been influenced by something that came off the back of be it colonialism and, traveling the world, etc., bringing spices back here, there's such an infusion of foods, I think, because of this cultural diversity. And then also, this, I think, has also led people to, the trends now as well, veganism, vegetarians, things like that. I think that's also really a big driving change in terms of how we're all eating in the UK. I think, every menu, I'd imagine 10 years ago, you'd struggle to even find something vegan on the menu if you went out. Whereas now, that's pretty much like a set piece standard. You will get something healthy, something vegan, vegetarian, trying to cater for everybody. And I think that cultural diversity does really influence that. Everybody's trying something different. I was Portobello Market. You can try pretty much every cuisine in the market now, can't you? Which I think is beautiful, because some of these foods I would have never really. I like to travel and I like to try food, so I wouldn't actually do that. But some people who may be visiting would never get the opportunity to try things like that. And then I think food retail as well, online shopping, expansion of supermarkets, the way they're competing for prices, etc. I think that's also a very inadvertent driving factor into our eating habits without people even actually realizing it. I would say that's quite a big one. And even the simple, like, as much as we talked about the food apps Amina mentioned, there's also the other side. You can actually get your whole food shop like to your house. That in itself, I think, changes how, from weight management stations I've delivered, that does change how somebody puts certain things within their shopping basket in comparison to actually being there in person and feeling that item. I think that's definitely made a big difference. So convenience foods, I would say, environmental as well. We have, without offending anybody, eco warriors. People are now more conscious of the impact that, you know, how we eat has on the planet, which again, of course, is connected to the veganism, vegetarian thing side of things, I would say. So convenience food, you know, that environmental side of things, dietary awareness, the digital sort of technological advances, and food retail trends, I would say, are definitely the biggest driving factors over the last 20 years.
Wow, it's a pretty comprehensive list when you think of it. Between the pair of you, you've touched on pretty much everything, and it's you know, you're right in what you say. It's hard to, I suppose, pick out what might be the most important drivers of change. But so thank you for that, and it's great that Craig's been able to join us, because I think there were some IT problems for you, Craig, and
That's right.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so
hear me
much.
now, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you. That's
Okay.
great. And thank you so
Good.
much for joining us. I just wondered, Craig, you may not remember, but we met last year. You gave a lovely presentation to the nutrition students, so thank you for that. But would you mind just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll ask you the same question as I asked the others. And Genesis, if you don't mind just muting while you're not speaking, that would be great. And I'll do the same.
Yeah, my name's Craig Sams. I started with a macrobiotic restaurant back in the late 60s, introducing organic brown rice, a lot of Japanese type products like miso, tamari, eating seaweed, which was rather shocking at the time to people. Then we opened a shop. Then we started wholesaling to other natural food retailers who were popping up all over the country. That was called Harmony Foods. Then we changed it to Whole Earth Foods. And our main products then were peanut butter, jam. We moved away from brown rice and the commodities. And then in 1991, I launched Green and Black's chocolate, which was the first organic high cocoa solids chocolate. And so we had Whole Earth Foods and a soft drink called Gusto, and you know, all organic and fair trade. And now I'm mainly in a company called Carbon Gold, where we do something called biochar that helps farmers to lock carbon in the soil and farm organically if they want to. So that's kind of where I am up to, if you like. We sold off Green and Blacks and Whole Earth about 10 years ago. So
thank you. That's a great introduction, and it's just yeah, it's awesome what you've done. I still remember from last year you talked about Pink Floyd being the band that played in, I think, where you had your first restaurant, and I've been just massively jealous of that ever since. But
well, they were just a bunch of boys from Cambridge who came down every Saturday night to play at the UFO Club. And
amazing.
then at lunch, when they did a break between their sets, people would go and get this funny food at the bar, and then we would have to explain to them why brown rice was good for you and sugar was bad for you. And so when I opened my first restaurant, there was a cohort of customers that we could immediately tap into, and it all grew from there.
I grew from there. So, like, when we were just talking before you arrived about the kind of changes to eating habits that have happened in the UK over the last decades and what's driven those, and actually one of the things that are, well, among many things that came up was environmental drivers, and also you know, vegetarianism, veganism, and so on. I mean, what are your thoughts about the main things that have caused changes to eating habits over the last few years?
Well, one of the things you find with vegetarians is they are far more likely to choose organic than non-vegetarians. It just comes with the territory. You know, they're conscious about food and about nutrition and about their gut microbiome, and that translates into eating organic whenever possible. So I think that's an important consideration. Something happened a few years ago with genetically engineered food and the widespread use of glyphosate. That was all driven by Monsanto, who then ended up, that all got taken over by Bayer, who are paying out, they just paid out 175 million 2 weeks ago. They're pouring money into the damage lawsuits that are just building and building because of the amount of glyphosate that got sprayed because of genetically engineered Roundup resistant crops. So there's a backlash building, but certainly in the future of agriculture, whether people go organic or not, they're going to be a lot more careful about what happens at the field level, because whatever happens there ends up in our stomachs ultimately. And so I think we're moving fairly rapidly, and with carbon pricing, it's going to really accelerate it, because organic farming tends to have negative emissions, where conventional farming is responsible for 1/3 of the annual increase in greenhouse gas levels. So once carbon pricing really kicks in, and that's partly why I'm going to COP28, I've been asked to be on a panel about that. It's going to make a real difference, and arguably at today's carbon price of 100 euros a ton, organic food would be cheaper than non-organic food, and everybody could be eating organic and saving money. So we'll see whether that unfolds. That's my dream, but so.
Well, you've been working towards it for a long time in very different ways, I guess. But I mean, I suppose from your perspective, there's positives about technological advances in the sense of carbon and how farming may be done and so on. And we were speaking previously about how some of the technological advances have made it easier for us to eat more without ever leaving the house because of apps and so on, that we can just order food that's delivered to the home. And it's, I suppose, weighing up the two sides of those really, and thinking about how we can benefit ourselves at the end of the day. But I'm just thinking about campaigns and initiatives that have made a difference in relation to public health, indeed, if there have been any from your perspectives. And I suppose I'm just wondering, and maybe if I start with you again, Amina, if you don't mind, are there any particular kind of campaigns around food, health and well-being that you feel have made a difference? Or are there any that you think should be put into place to make a difference?
I think one that I actually gave the keynote speech at the event that launched it back in 2004 was what the Soil Association calls Food for Life. And it's introduced a big change in school meals and how they're prepared and what drives them. It also includes educating school kids at that early age about nutrition and health, so that they're not just eating something that was manufactured in a factory 100 miles away, but they're actually part of a program of freshly prepared and sourced food. And I think that, that it's too early to say what the impact of that will be. Some of it has switched to hospitals as well, because hospital food is notoriously bad, and yet people who are in hospital really need good nutrition. So I think that program, and the Soil Association is very careful not to insist on organic, although obviously that's what drives the philosophy. But going right back to the beginning, the Soil Association was about the importance of nutrition as well as the importance of clean, wholesome food. So I think that's had an impact, but generally there is just such a astronomical increase in awareness of the importance, the gut microbiome. Every time you open a newspaper now, you read about the vagus nerve that's connecting the gut to the brain, and you realize that, what we eat affects how we think and how we feel. And that awareness was never there before.
No, that's very true, and those are great examples. And in fact, Genesis was talking about the importance of mental health before you joined us. But so thank you for getting us off to a good start on that one. I just wonder, Amina, from your perspective, are there any that jump out for you?
Yeah, so working with children over the past 3 years, and working with families as well, one of the campaigns that I would say all of the children that I've come across that they're aware of is the 5 a day, to try and have a minimum of 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Whether they do that or not is another question, but everyone always knows that one, which I think is a great starting point for health and nutrition. And I think, just like what was being said earlier, there is an increase in understanding about nutrition and health. But sometimes I feel like working as a nutritionist or working like in the nutrition industry, it's really easy to assume that everyone has that knowledge. Whereas the more, I guess, the more diverse your audience and the people that you're working with, the more you realize actually it's not always the case. Yes, it might be with, you know, certain individuals or certain parts of the population, but working in Brent, that has a high level of poverty, that has a high level of people from different ethnic minorities and ethnic backgrounds, I think that's one easy assumption that working in public health we can make, that sometimes is not the best. But yeah, going back to campaigns, the 5 a day is usually one that always stands out. Even things like the Eat Well Guide, because it starts in schools, they start teaching them in schools. A lot of children are familiar with that. They might not know, again, specifically, but they have definitely seen it before. I guess different campaigns as well. So what Marcus Rashford was doing as well in terms of providing free school meals. I think that his work was great. Yeah, and most of, I guess, working in public health and working with children, I know the importance of those campaigns starting with schools and educating younger generation.
Yeah, because they really drive change, don't they? But I'm interested also in what you said about, you know, the children may well have awareness of the 5 a day campaign, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're necessarily eating the fruit and vegetables.
Oh.
So, I mean, do you think that that's an impactful campaign? Certainly, knowledge of it might be high, but does that necessarily translate into behavior?
Yeah, that's the thing, Hilda. I find that some of the nutrition information is there with most of the population that we work with. However, it's the behavior change that is missing. And that's why within our programs, we like to embed that within our sessions, because it's great that we are adding to their information sometimes in terms of portions and things like that, but there's no point if they don't know how to implement it. There's no point if, for example, at that moment in time, what the priority is of that family is to get something on the table, to get anything on the table. So I think behavior change is what we're lacking right now within the nutrition and public health sphere, definitely, and how to empower people to make those changes.
Yeah, that's so true, like bridging the gap between knowing something and doing it. And I can see Genesis is nodding his head furiously there. What are your thoughts, Genesis? Thank you,
Honestly,
Amina.
my head's about to fall off. It is where I'm nodding so much. I think you're right. Behavior change is fundamentally key to any of these changes. You can do all you like, but if it's not changing up there, nothing's going to happen. And I think we have to bear in mind as well the wider determinants to health. Like you said, if the priority is dealing with mold or bills or debt, etc., no amount of eating 5 apples a day is going to make any difference, is it? We have to look at it from a wider scope, I would say. So absolutely agree with that one, Amina. But I think to answer the question as to what campaigns, going back to your first question, habits have been changing over the past 20 years due to dietary awareness. People are becoming more aware. And that has then had an impact on health and education. You know, the government's now more invested, various organizations are more interested in promoting education. And I think in terms, for me, what food campaign or initiative would I say has probably been most impactful in terms of public health? I think the sugar reduction program, 100%. I think that's definitely obviously spearheaded by public health, helped to reduce, sugar intake in terms of food, drink, which of course then connects, as we know, is connected to the rise in obesity, etc. And I think it was quite nicely done in terms of, the sugar tax, soft drink levy, for example. Obviously, numerous number of educational campaigns like the 5 a day, food labeling as well. I think those sort of changes definitely are making a difference. And I mean, I don't hate sugar, but I think we do definitely need to look at it in a different kind of way and educate people more. So I'd say that one's gone quite a long way in terms of being more impactful. However, I do think in terms of workplace and other public policies, there is room for improvement. As I mentioned at the beginning, in terms of my background, currently I have a focus on workplace well-being. I think more could definitely be done in terms of wellness programs within the workspace that can definitely be improved. As I said, we spend more time at work, therefore, than we do at home or with our loved ones. So then if we can use that to actually influence people to make those changes, I think we'll be surprised as to how much impact that could actually have. It's kind of like influencing people through the back door, if you like. I encourage things like, making sure that employees have, I don't know, a fruit Wednesday or something, where have a bowl of fruit on the table for everybody. I mean, I had that at one of my old jobs, and looking at that, I would take some fruit home as a little extra kind of thing, which again, somebody may not have fruit for the whole week. That's the one time that they're going to, get to experience something like that. That's something so small, so simple, but yet could have so much impact. As I said, I'm into mental health, conversations in the workspace about mental health. If you're having trouble at home, maybe you don't want to talk to your friends and family, but actually somebody at work who's a little bit more distant could, I think, long and short of it is, I think promoting employee health and well-being is something that could definitely improve. And I think advertising as well. I have children. I think we've gone a long way in terms of changing policies as to advertising certain times and what they can actually show, but there's still clearly loopholes whereby a lot of these big companies are literally, you go into a supermarket, you look at all the cereal boxes, they are literally plastered with your favorite cartoon character, etc. What's the child gonna do? Yeah, I want that one, Daddy. Doesn't happen in my house, of course, but you can imagine it's things like that. I think I understand it's business, everybody wants to make profits, etc., but there has to be a fine line, especially when it comes to children. I think we need to work a bit harder on advertising restrictions, as well as, of course, food labels as well. They complicate them sometimes, etc. They have been simplified, but again, I think we can fine tune that in relation to improving policies, I would say.
Yeah, so I suppose giving people the tools they need to understand, the pros and cons of particular foods they might be choosing, but in ways that they can understand. And as Amina said earlier on, that might not necessarily be the same for all groups, that we have to think about tailoring our messages for different groups. So no, that is great. There's some really interesting thoughts there on all of those. You've come at it from very different angles. But just, I mean, at the end of the day, we've probably never lived in a time when there's been more information about food and nutrition and eating. I mean, Craig was talking about the microbiome and saying you can hardly pick up a newspaper without reading something about the gut microbiome and how it relates to what we eat and how it relates to brain health and so on. There's lots of information actually out there, but what advice or resources would you give to individuals to help them make good decisions, balanced decisions, in relation to nutrition that would benefit them? And maybe if I start with Craig this time.
Well, I think it's all about education and just raising that understanding. When we had our shop on Portobello Road, the first natural food store as such, we had squatters coming from Goulburn Road area where there'd been a lot of demolition for the Westway, who were extremely conscientious about brown rice and whole grains, and we didn't sell any sugar in the shop and they weren't interested in it. But we would also get people coming up in from Holland Park, from the posh end of the neighborhood, in chauffeur-driven Daimlers, and they would get out and buy organic vegetables and brown rice and whole grains. And we had a bakery that did whole grain sourdough bread. And you realize it's not a class thing. It's just about getting your head around the connection between food, health, and happiness. And, we talked about mental health earlier. Food makes such a difference. If your blood sugar levels are balanced, then depression and that sort of thing become less of a problem, even though you may be living in the same life factors in terms of income or accommodation or whatever. But the person who eats a lot of sugar is going to become depressed, go to the doctor, get antidepressants. That doesn't make it better. It doesn't cure it. It just makes it less painful. And so it's that awareness. And, the fact that squatters who had no money or practically no money were as conscientious about it as the, upper classes from Holland Park, it shows it's not about income, which sometimes people say, oh, and those days it was, people, they still do, oh, I can't afford organic food. But actually, if you cook food yourself, and if you know how to cook, then the cost of food becomes almost insignificant because you're not paying all the cost of processing, packaging, all the other stuff that goes into sort of highly processed, highly refined, highly sweetened food. And, the more we move away from that, and the choices are there. You maybe you're going to ask about this later, but I just wonder what difference COVID has made, because so many people are working from home now. It means they can skip breakfast, they can do a keto diet without worrying about starving to death, before lunchtime. Even if they are going to work, the kind of food you get in places like Lyon and Pret-a-Manger are beyond comparison to the choices you would have had 20 or 30 years ago, when it was all white bread, cheese, hydrogenated fat and everything. That's all history now. And it will take years, decades possibly, before all the benefit of that works through. But at least we're going in the right direction. I think we bottomed out probably somewhere around the late 1980s. And it's been kind of on the mend since then, bit by bit.
You are an optimist. I really hope you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right that there's so much more choice now than there was, but at the same time, you have rising levels of food insecurity, people who don't necessarily have the equipment or the kitchen facilities or the knowledge or the confidence to cook, or indeed the time to cook, because they're juggling multiple jobs and multiple responsibilities. I don't know, I do research at the moment on community food projects, and some of the interviews that you do with people about their circumstances are quite, I don't know, they're very humbling to hear, but so like, I feel like for many of us, we're in a privileged position where we can choose to go to Pret or to have the time to think about making those decisions, whereas for other people it's more, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, Amina, about putting anything on the table, because you've got stomachs to fill and not very much time and maybe not a lot of budget to play with. So you've got this real disparity there, and I feel like we're almost becoming a less equal society in a lot of ways. So you're so right in what you say, but it is a really strange disparity that at the same time as having lots more choice, there is a bigger group of people who appear to have less choice, which is strange, I think. And I don't know, have you come across that in your work, Amina, with public health?
Yeah, actually, it's funny what you said there. It reminded me, Hilda, I don't know if you remember, but when I was at uni, we did the Cook and Eat school. Do you remember that?
I do. That was Wednesday evenings for 3 years.
It was. So I remember one of the sessions that I was there, and the recipe that we were doing had cheese, and part of it was you had to grate, like you had you had to grate cheese. And I remember one of the students had never seen a block of cheese on a grater before, and they didn't actually know what to do with it. So they actually just put the grater in, put the cheese inside the grater, like if you turn it around. And I'm not sure what they were waiting for, but some of these things that are so obvious to us are not to others. I mean, I remember even one of the sessions that I did with one of the children, and we usually provide them a healthy snack. So I can't remember exactly what fruit or vegetable it was, but it was something so obvious like a cucumber, and they'd never seen it before. They'd never seen it before. They had no idea what it was. So there is that big disparity, and I think it is increasing to a certain extent. But yes, there on the flip side of the coin is that there is that overwhelm of information, and food is always in the news on social media all the time, on adverts. So going back to your earlier question, the nutrition advice that I always give is actually just to take a step back, keep things simple, forget all the jargon and big words that you read on social media, whether it's, I don't know, superfoods, keto diet, and actually just take a step back, keep things simple. We don't want to overcomplicate things, and just look at different, just understand your eating habits, what they are, what level you are right now, and maybe what you can add to your meals that might make it a bit more balanced, or that might make it a bit more healthier, rather than going into the nitty-gritty, because a lot of the times people can get into the nitty-gritty way too much. Things get complicated. 2 weeks later, 10 days later, they're over it. They move on, and they don't make any sustainable changes. So for me, it's keep things simple. What can you add to your meals? Can you possibly boil some frozen peas and add that to whatever it is that you're eating? Can you if you're having, for example, a chocolate bar, could you possibly have a banana with that as well? What can you add rather than remove? A lot of the times people end up removing, they feel deprived, they feel like there's no point of this, and then they go back to how they were, what they were doing before. So I think that's my main advice.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I suppose, as Craig rightly said, there's more choice now than there was in the past, and that extends to supermarkets as well. So there's more choices that people can make in the supermarket about things they could add to their diet if they know and can afford to, pick things that will fit their budget, that they know are good for them. That's great. And psychologically, then there is that difference between feeling deprived and feeling like this is something I'm good that I'm doing for myself, but I'm not feeling really deprived. Thank you for that. Genesis, you again were nodding your head furiously.
Honestly, I'm going to have a neck ache by the end of this. I mean, I agree with both what Craig said and Mina as well. I mean, I think I saw a study about what you touched on there, Mina, where children did not even know how to identify tuna. They genuinely thought it grows out of a can. I mean, things like that are shocking, which leads to my next point as to what advice would I really give. I think there has to be, as much as there's so much information out there, there's too much to a certain degree. I mean, it keeps people like me in business, because my job is to, disseminate all this complex stuff for you guys. But I think it's a gift and a curse, technology, in that sense. And I think the key is to take some level of responsibility. This is where behavior change comes in. We must educate ourselves. I mean, that's nobody's got an excuse for that to a certain degree, especially when, like I said, organizations, government are trying to help. We have so much free resources out there. So we must be seeking reliable sources, registered nutritionist, dietitians, NHS, etc., certain websites. But the key is education. And I think Amina kind of touched on it. Let's keep things simple. One of my favorite workshops to deliver is called How to Eat Well on a Budget, whether it's in the workplace or at home. And with that, again, people say, it's really expensive to eat healthy. It's really not. I say to people, it's going to cost you, whether it costs you with your health, your time, or your money. You choose. It's going to cost you one of those three. And really, I'd rather my time, if I'm honest with you. What would you rather do, Netflix and chill, or just stand in the kitchen, play some music, and meal prep? Which leads me to my next point. I think you have to plan. If you fail to prepare to fail, as they say. And I think simple things I sort of teach my clients in any workshops I deliver. I think Craig kind of touched on it. Cook at home, first and foremost. Me, I love to cook at home. I know that food has been made with love. You see, don't really like eating out. Some chef was upset and all that bad energy and bad vibes gone to, no, we don't like that. We like to eat at home. I would say, first thing I usually say is I've got like a 4 or 5 step guide. I say, first of all, sit down. Whether it's in my household, this is what we do as a family. Sunday, we sit down. I give my children the illusion of choice. Illusion. What do you want to eat today? What do you want to eat? What do you want to eat? And we put it on a grid. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's where we start. And then thereafter, so if there's any students in the house, this will definitely help you save money. I can guarantee you your shopping bill will go down. Normally I'd say a third, but with this cost of living crisis, maybe 1/5 it might reduce your bill by. So you meal plan, you write a grid. Okay, this is what I'm going to have. And then you write your shopping list. Nothing that is not on that grid should really be going on that shopping list. You don't need a pack of biscuits, etc. if it wasn't on that meal plan. So you write the grid, you write your shopping list, and then you go to the supermarket and you literally are tunnel vision. Only buy things that are on that list. Do not be seduced by all this fancy packaging, etc. is what I would say. And then if you have to cook in bulk as well, twice a week or so, I mean, nobody likes soggy veg, I understand. But if you can kind of try and split it up, I think that definitely goes a long way. And learn to read food labels. We have to teach ourselves how to. They try and catch you out. You see, these marketers are sneaky. They will catch you out if you don't educate yourself. But, and of course, I think Amina touched on this. Balance and moderation. Get to know yourself. Just because somebody eats X, Y, and Z every day doesn't mean that's going to work for you. You have to be more in tune with yourself, know yourself, understand your preferences. You know, if you like a chocolate bar, fine, have a chocolate bar. You know, you're grown, you work hard for your money, life is too short, but do it in moderation. Understand there are repercussions to your behavior and you might have to pull back or something on another day. You know, try and go a bit more organic, go dark chocolate. And my favorite snack is apple and peanut butter. Oh, beautiful. Cheap, cheerful, simple. It's things like that. So I would say cook at home, meal plan, balance and moderation, learn to read labels above all, I would say, in terms of just helping. And also, experts, go to the reliable sources and don't just rely on the Google search. That's what I would say.
That's fantastic. I think the three of you have given us all so much food for thought, really. I was laughing there when you said, Genesis, about your favorite snack, because I was thinking, oh, peanut butter, whole earth peanut butter. Then I thought Craig has sold whole earth. So, but it is still such a reputable brand to see there on the supermarket shelves. So,
yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I've got that in my cupboard.
Thank you for bringing whole earth to our lives.
It was less than 4 hours ago that I had half a banana with whole earth peanut butter just added on the end for each mouthful. So I'm with you on peanut butter and fruit for sure.
You heard it here first, folks. Thanks, guys. I'm going to hand over to Janice now, but it's just been such a total pleasure talking with the three of you this afternoon. So thank you.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It's been absolutely fascinating, and yeah, but really some great tips and things to sort of take away. Obviously, now's a chance if you wanted to add in your questions to the chat, please do so. We do have one from one of the guests here, and I think this is to Craig. Do you differentiate between brown rice, red rice, and unhusked rice? Now, forgive me, I'm not sure what the difference between those three would be, but I guess that was the question posed to you, Craig, in the first instance.
Red rice and brown rice are really the same. It's just that the bran on red rice is a reddish color. In fact, my dad's landlord in Saigon in 1970 was the head of the Vietnam Macrobiotic Society, and they shipped red rice to us, and eventually they started growing it in the Camargue in the south of France. Unhusked rice still has the outer husk. I wouldn't eat that. But unpolished rice, i.e. rice that leaves the bran and the germ on, is the way all rice really should be. When it's refined, what happens to the bran and the germ? It goes to people who supply fitness freaks. So you end up with the gamma oryzanol, which is the rice bran oil, and the actual rice bran in concoctions that athletes and bodybuilders use because it's such a concentrated way of building strength. The Viet Cong As I said, my dad was in Vietnam, so he knows what was going on there. When the Americans were eating hamburgers and milkshakes flowing in at great risk in helicopters, the Viet Cong had little pouches of whole grain baked rice that they could eat on the go. And they prevailed in the end. You know, I've been a brown rice nut for longer than I care to remember, nearly 60 years. And, you know, whether it's red or brown, in the old days, brown rice was something that was actually white rice that had been cooked in the husk and the bran to get some of those B vitamins into the white part of the rice by cooking process. And they called that brown rice. And if you ate that, you wouldn't get pellagra, which was the problem, or beriberi, actually. But it was, and that was important in countries where people's diet was 90% rice. In Thailand, the army never ate white rice. It was like for military people who had to be fully fit, brown rice was what you had, end of story. And nowadays you can get long grain basmati brown rice, and believe me, it tastes better than white basmati rice. So it always amazes me that there aren't more restaurants doing brown rice, because it's a whole grain, and whole grains are the base. Whole wheat bread, whole grain rice, grains like buckwheat and millet. That's how you build a healthy diet. That's the foundation.
Questions are flooding in now, so hopefully we'll be able to get through as many as we can. I know, Craig, you have to dash at 2. So from Amanda, we've all been quite inspired to kind of push for you know, more cooking from home, particularly when it's quite tricky with big families and probably quite fussy children as well. I know the more love and effort and time I put into my dishes, the less my children will eat of it, quite annoyingly. So Amanda's asking, do you have a meal plans for a family of 4 that perhaps you could share? That might, I don't know, Genesis might be able to sort of make some recommendations. I know you've got a family of 5 to cook for. Maybe if I direct that one to Genesis about, you know, getting children to eat things that you have, you know, taking the time to work and effort and cook. So we sort of touched a little bit on that.
That's a really difficult one. I find, I mean, I won't lie, my wife covers that department very well. She does. But one thing that does work is, like I said, when you're planning those meals, get the children involved. That makes a very, very big difference. Even if you're giving the illusion of choice, give them 2 choices that you're kind of dictating. And I'd also say, yeah, getting them involved in the kitchen as well kind of makes it a very, very, very big difference, I would say. And I just like to keep it simple, you know, meat, veg, and some sort of a grain as well. Don't overcomplicate things. And there's no magic answer I can give to that question, if I'm honest with you, because it's something that takes time. But one thing I will not entertain in my house anyway is this idea of fussy eating is okay. As we know, you know, it's about repetition, you know, exposure, repeated, then it just starts to become part of the family. And I think most importantly, we have to lead by example as parents. If you're not actually doing it, there's no way you can expect a child to eat a certain way, is what I would say. We have to lead by example. I think that's fundamentally where it starts. And I've noticed, you know, my oldest is 11 actually yesterday, and actually it's becoming pretty much ingrained in them. Yes, of course, they still want to have cake and sweets and the like, but it's become just a part of their life. So you have to lead by example to start with, get them involved as well. And I think Amina touched on this earlier on. It's about behavior change. And the only way we can change behavior is by actually doing it ourselves. Children don't learn from what we tell them, but what they see is what I'm understanding in my spring chicken years. I may be wrong. Maybe I'll tell you at the next event, but I hope that helps.
Oh, super. I will maybe come back to this, Amanda's second question if I've got time. But you can also, you know, if you want to reply to things in the chat, the panelists, you can do that as well. If that's there's quite a few coming through. A question from Nish. would you consider fresh cooking kits as part of a healthy, balanced diet? So I'm imagining this is sort of the things like Hello Fresh. So, you know, you can get the kind of stuff delivered to your door, you choose your meals and you get all the sort of stuff come in quickly. Amina, I don't know whether you wanted to jump in on that, because there's plenty of options there, and obviously they're trying to sell that. They're not that cheap either, but yeah.
Genesis doesn't approve. I mean, I guess it's one of those things that, again, two sides to the coin. If that's where someone wants to start in trying to get more ideas of what recipes they want to make, for example, or what options are available out there, how to incorporate more fruit and veg in their diet. As a starting point, it might be expensive. It might be, you know, as a starting point, it might work for some people, but I think that information is readily available online. You don't necessarily need to, you know, pay that extra money to get that kit. It'll be, you know, a quicker idea and a cheaper idea. Maybe it's just to find some recipes on Google, see how maybe you can incorporate some fruit or some vegetables in there, maybe. I guess even some fruits, depending on what the recipe is. And yeah, doing that at home. Was the question for kids as well? Was it about kids?
I think it was more just generally you can get them thinking of these things for like packages of families and stuff like that. Or you know, you can get it for like, you know, a single person, but you know, it's just
I think like I said, it's one of those things that as a starting point, it might be helpful. If, for example, you're going through like a very busy time in your life, it might be helpful just to have that. Like I remember when I had my son, I got one of those kits for a while, and actually, you know, in those first few weeks, it was actually really helpful. Just, I don't need to think about anything. I can just put it on there. Long term, you know, I haven't like continued with that subscription at all. But for that month of my life, yeah, it was helpful.
Yeah, super. Hilda, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, just I think what Amina just said there, like there are probably times when they're particularly useful, and for some people they work great. But there was some research done about food waste, and actually one of the markers of food waste was buying things like that, because I guess sometimes you end up with foods that you don't necessarily like or your family won't accept, and then they're obviously fresh fruit and vegetables, so they're going to go off. So they're not necessarily saving you money in the long term. And so they're only beneficial, I guess, if you actually use them and eat those foods. Maybe they're a good starting place for some people, but probably long term, maybe not so much.
Craig, I know you have to dash off now. We do have a few other questions, so if our other panelists are happy to stay for another 5 minutes, let's say, we can try and squeeze as many as in. But just to thank you, Craig, for joining us. I'm sorry about the glitches at the beginning.
I have to go, but my train is leaving at 2:21, and got to dash.
It won't wait for you, so on you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. Thanks so much.
Bye.
I think there's a really wonderful question I just wanted to touch on a bit, and forgive me, I know there's been answers. Hilda's been busy answering questions through the chat. So there was a lovely question from Aisha about neurodiverse children encouraged to adopt a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. It's a little expensive to start in calculating this diet into our routines. Any thoughts on this? Any way to make it a bit easier? I might start with you, Hilda, actually, on that question.
Sorry, I was answering something in the chat.
Sorry, I just jumped on you there with that. Aisha was asking about neurodiverse children being encouraged to adopt a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. It's a little expensive to start in calculating this into our routines. Is there any thoughts on doing this, but also any way to make it easier? So
I mean, I think it kind of diets where you're being asked to really restrict intake are always more complicated, because you have to just be careful about reading ingredients lists and, you know, choosing particular products. Like I can't remember the name of the it might be is it the Celiac Society or Celiac UK now? So they have a book that they produce every year that gives a list of products that are gluten free. So you can use that to, you know, look up specific products that are gluten free, but they're not going to include the dairy free kind of side of things. So you've then got another set of things to look for on food labels. So I think what you probably do is you end up finding the specific foods that fit your child. I don't know whether this is a long-term proposition for the specific child or whether this advice has come from a dietitian. If it has, then they should have been provided with kind of specific dietary advice and probably starting information about some products that they could choose to use. And it might well be that it's something that they're going to trial for a while to see if it makes a difference. But I think reading labels is really the only way around that, and it's not easy. But having said that, as Craig mentioned earlier on, there's greater choices now available, and most supermarkets have free from shelves with lots of free from products on them, but they're also not that cheap. So I guess cooking maybe from scratch as much as you can with fresh ingredients, then you know exactly what's gone in there.
Super. I can see that some of the questions have been answered as the way through, so apologies if I have missed any. I know Stephanie's, I think Hilda, you responded back. There was a question from Lavanya about how to handle food allergies. For example, if a child has a mild nut allergy, is it better to give the child little by little or completely away from it? I don't know who wants to take that one, or
I actually had started writing and then stopped to answer this question. And I was just, oh, no, it's absolutely fine. But just in relation to nut allergy, that can be so serious that you definitely don't reintroduce nuts without medical advice. If it's a diagnosed nut allergy, then I wouldn't introduce nuts unless a healthcare professional has said to do so and in what quantities and under medical supervision. So I wouldn't advocate introducing nuts to a nut-free child now, a nut allergy child.
I'm thinking, I'm just having a look back through the chats. There's some really great comments as well, so do everyone have a little take a look. Another comment about nutrition is very important. Taste drives eating habits. Does the panel feel that nutritionists and flavorers should work closely with each other? After all, taste is king. That's quite an interesting question, isn't it, actually, because like there's a lot of talk about artificial flavors and how that's actually masking the stuff that should be in original foods already. So maybe Genesis, I don't know if direct that one to you.
I mean, food is like a big part of culture. You go to a wedding, it's food. You go to birth, you know, it's food. Your first date is food. So I appreciate, yes, but we have to remember that first and foremost, food is actually fuel for the body, and then our taste buds to be pleased after the fact. And yes, I think all these, you know, additives, etc., are skewering, you know, our sense of taste, whether it be over heightening them, etc. Personally, I find when I eat very clean, my senses kind of reconnect, and then when I eat, I don't know, some fatty food, I really taste it, or eat something sugary, it literally throws me out of whack, I would say. And I think it's a personal thing. I would say, in relation to, you know, your taste buds and how much, because if you're led by taste buds, you know, I promise you, your health is going to literally go down the pan. Like it really is. And that's where, you know, the fast food industry understands this very fundamental point, I would say, and they use that to their advantage. And that's why we're very much disassociated or not connected with our food, to a point where children think tuna rolls out of a can. You know, I think yeah, everybody needs like a reset sometimes, just to actually get reacquainted with your taste buds, because a lot of the time I think you don't even know anymore. It's so overwhelming. I think, without digressing too much, all of our senses are pretty much now overwhelmed. We live in a world where we're overwhelmed in terms of everything, be it visual, taste, etc. Probably didn't quite answer the question there, and I went off on one, but I hope it helps.
It does. Thank you very much. I think that's them all. I don't know if I've missed any. I've been scrolling down a little bit. I think I've got them all there, but I don't know if there's any final thoughts before I do a quick wrap up. I mean, I just obviously from the alumni perspective, thank you very much everybody for joining. And thank you for taking the time to be here for the panelists as well. We really do appreciate your time and effort and sharing of your expertise. It isn't simple. I mean, it should be simple, but it isn't. And, you know, even kind of, say, sitting from quite a privileged background, we are not always making the right choices that perhaps we should. So it's really great to sort of have a bit of a chat about this and feel like, you know, a bit less alone as well, because that helps too, doesn't it? Often you feel like you're the only one struggling with healthy eating. There will be a recording of this. We'll have it up online. It will take a wee while, so don't expect it to be kind of immediate. It'll take but we will send that out when it's available, and also be kind of going out to sort of the wider alumni community as well, to so that everyone kind of share and have a you know, insights into this topic. I mean, it's been wonderful to have you all here. Again, any final thoughts? Any from the panel?
Massive thank you from me, and just so lovely to see Amina and Genesis again, and Craig as well, of course. But Amina and Genesis, we spent many years together working our way through the nutrition degree, and it's just such a privilege to see you guys again and to hear about what you're doing, the wonderful work you're doing.
Yeah, and if any of you have got any ideas as audience members of, like, you know, what you want to hear in your next upgrade masterclass, then, you know, please do let us know. We're always open to suggestions. Yeah, no subject too bespoke or niche. Do let us know. And if there's other things, like, you know, if you want to find out more about getting involved, volunteering, find out a little bit more about sort of supporting the Kingston students, then do take a little visit to www.kingston.ac.uk/alumni, and you can also update details and things like that, so we can still keep you in touch and keep you informed of these lovely things that are happening within your community. So yeah, please do that. But yes, thank you all so much. Thanks, Amina. Thanks, Genesis. Thanks, Hilda.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.